The Oklahoma City Thunder are young. We all know that. But are they too good not to win an NBA Finals? Which contender has the most glaring weakness heading into the stretch run? Cooper Flagg hints that he may stay in school. Which lottery team should be sweating through their shorts the most? That and Kevin Durant tells everyone to go touch some grass and watch some hockey? That's all today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets, and your Shot Clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories with the help of Locked On's local experts. And with me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior NBA writer for the Action Network. It's Matt Moore.
I miss basketball, Doug. I miss basketball badly.
And I miss you talking about basketball. And from the Locked On Bulls podcast, we've got Hayes.
When we are discussing pizza, let's stop discussing Chicago deep dish versus New York style. It's tavern style pizza in Chicago. Thank you very much.
And I totally agree with you. In fact, I made tavern style pizza for my Super Bowl party in Nashville, Tennessee. It was a hit. It was a revelation to those involved. So you're right on the money there. All right, let's talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder. Despite early injury issues to their entire front court rotation, the Oklahoma City Thunder have spent the past few months mowing down most of their competition. In fact, they're on pace to have the highest net rating in NBA regular season history. Is that a good indication of their title chances? One would think so. Or will the high expectations actually be a negative? Let's hear from Locked On Thunder host Rylan Stiles and his guest, Joe Mazzato of the Oklahoman.
This team is the best team in Thunder history. Statistically, record-wise, I think it will be when it's all said and done. But then also just its functionality on the court feels a lot more cohesive.
Maybe the best regular season team by net rating of all time. And then you look at that and say, well, they should win it. Windows are open for, much shorter than we usually think they are. But like this is just the beginning. This is their second playoff run.
If they went and won a title, they would be a clear anomaly. And we would marvel at the fact that they have just bucked NBA history. And so it's hard for me to grade them on that scale of you got to either be an anomaly or else you're a failure. And to me, that's really tough to put on this team. But every game that passes by, every mark that they hit, it's they're now in this stat category, and every other team in that stat category has won an NBA title. And it's just this weird place to be in.
Okay, Matt, what do you think? Is this a built-in excuse for a young team to miss out on an NBA Finals, or should we expect them to do it this season?
I am struggling with the era. Is what I'm kind of struggling with. So here's a question. So I got the top 10 teams in margin of victory, not net rating, just margin of victory, straight up, just how much did you win each game by? Okay. The 2024 Boston Celtics, who we all talked about last year. If you listen to the squad show, Locked On Lakers host Andy Kamenetsky came out fervently defending the Boston Celtics. I'm sure Lakers fans should enjoy that. They're sixth on that list currently. Okay. The 2025 Cleveland Cavaliers, this year's Cavs team, are ninth. We got the 2017 Warriors, they belong there. 2016 Warriors, they belong there. We got teams like the 72 Lakers, the 71 Bucks, the 96 Bulls. Do these teams feel like they're on that level? Does it feel like this Thunder team is on the level of the 72 Lakers, the 71 Bucks, let alone the greatest team of all time in the 96 Bulls? Does it feel like that? That's what I can't get around, is the numbers are telling us one thing, but the context and watching them, it does not match the experience, Hayes. And I don't know how to get around that to set a reasonable expectation for them.
Yeah, it's hard to expect a team to make it to the NBA Finals when they haven't been there yet, right? And then on top of that, with youth, we've seen teams that are very talented and young, but they kind of have to figure out how to get over the hump to get that. The OKC Thunder are an amazing basketball team, make no mistake about it. Chet's still, just really coming back, and we still don't know what the ceiling of this team is really with having him and Isaiah Hartenstein and what they can be defensively. But I just struggle with ever expecting a team to make the NBA Finals when they haven't made it there before. And that's just where I sit with. This is an extremely, extremely talented team led by Shea, who's one of my favorite players to watch in the game of basketball. But I want to see how and what they do, how they go through this offseason. This postseason before I really start putting the expectations of an NBA Finals on top of them.
I think you mentioned Shea there. I think that changes the calculus a little bit for me. Like if this were a different Thunder team with a player that wasn't playing at an MVP level, then I think I would have more questions. But when you've got someone like Shea who has been a good player for them in the clutch, like I now expect them to do better in the playoffs than maybe I would have if he didn't exist and this was a team, not to hurt Hayes' feelings here, but a team full of 9 or 10 really good players. Like this would be a totally different thing, Matt.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, right? Like, what if Shea is an all-time player and we just don't know it yet? Right? How late was Jordan when he started actually racking up titles? What if Shea's on that level? Like, you have to be open to that possibility. It's good to have skepticism and not anoint people too early, but you have to also, I think, be open to the possibility of what they can be. Does it feel like there's a wide gulf between Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and, I'm trying to think, 1990 Michael Jordan? Yeah. Feels like there's a pretty big gap there. Does it feel like there's a gap between this year's Shea and 2009 LeBron James? Yeah. Does that mean he can't win the title? Absolutely not. And so trying to figure out like kind of how to parse these things. I'm not trying to deny or be like an absolute skeptic about everything, but I think it's difficult to kind of parse how Oklahoma City plays. They're on pace for this. So Jared Dubin over at his Substack last night in basketball, he's got era adjusted ratings. The Thunder are on pace for the second best defense of all time. How do we make sense of that? Right? Like, this doesn't feel like Bad Boys Pistons or 2004 Pistons. I'm having a really hard time trying to contextualize it against what the numbers are. That's what I love situations like this, because I love trying to parse, like, either you're wrong about how you feel or the numbers are missing context. It's one or the other, and trying to figure that mystery out, I think, is really fascinating.
Well, and that's what makes the NBA postseason so fun, because you get to write all of those narratives in a very compressed amount of time and just a few games to decide what we're going to think about a team and a legacy and a player's legacy. So that leads me into my next question. Hayes, which team are you most interested in seeing the Oklahoma City Thunder match up with in the Western Conference playoffs? And which team in the East would you think would make for the most entertaining finals if they had to meet the Oklahoma City Thunder?
Okay, so I'll start off with the matchup in the West. What team would I be interested? I would love to see the OKC Thunder against the Houston Rockets. I don't know if the Rockets make it there because of their youth, but two young teams that can lock in defensively. I would love to see that matchup. It's like the new age of the Western Conference of what that could be. As far as in the East, man, I just say the Cavs. Like, I get it as number one in the East, number one in the West. It's easy to default to that, but just the two games that we've gotten against these teams so far this season already have been very fun and entertaining to watch. You mean to give me two well-coached, well-balanced teams in the finals in the 7-game series? Sign me up.
I'll go with the Lakers. Luka, right? Knocked him out last year. LeBron. Now this team has had a bigger size advantage, and that's been the reason they've kind of big brothered them a little bit, and that's gone with AD. I think Dallas would also be a great one. But if you sign me up for Lakers and LeBron in a series, that feels like a very big moment for OKC. And that's what I want to see, is like, how do you respond in those biggest moments? In the finals, I want Cavs, man. I just think the style of play is so much fun. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen versus Shea, Chet, J-Dub, Aaron Wiggins, apparently. Like, having those kind of matchups, I think, is really fascinating to see. Watch out. Like, that style of play in a series would be just absolutely great basketball. The Thunder present the biggest threat, I think, in terms of having a solution for Boston, but I'd rather see the Cavs from a basketball standpoint. I think a 7-game series for both of those franchises would be absolutely terrific. And the fact that it would make NBA TV executives weep would be a bonus for me.
But see, I love that idea, right? I love that the basketball, I think you're right. The basketball would be so good that it would force people to the television. It would be like that movie, the low budget indie movie that gets everyone talking and they have to go see it. Yeah, maybe they see their popcorn movie too, but they have to see this other movie that gets everyone talking. I love that idea. So let us know what you think on YouTube, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. We've got a lot left to get to. What about the other contenders in the East and West? Which of those contenders have the biggest weakness? Cooper Flagg, expected to be the number 1 overall selection in the upcoming draft. He says, hey, I might stay in school. Which one of the teams that might select him are sweating the most thinking about that idea? That's all coming up on Locked On NBA. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes used to be waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so that you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Maybe it's your first watch, and maybe one of your Locked On local NBA shows is your first read. Go to LockedOnDaily.com and subscribe to get the latest news letters in your inbox. Okay, I want to circle back to a discussion that I wanted to have on contenders with the biggest weakness. Let's spend some time on them. With no games to cover, a lot of Locked On local hosts have been putting the microscope on the teams that they cover, including Locked On Knicks, who have some numbers on the Knicks starters this season. We know that they're getting lots of minutes, but are they getting results? Let's take a listen.
The New York Knicks starters this year have played 806 minutes. That is nearly 300 minutes more than any other lineup in the NBA. Only 4 lineups have played even half as many minutes. So that is an astounding number. In that time, they are plus 5.9 points per 100 possessions, a 54th percentile lineup, so slightly above average. For context, the Knicks' January lineup last year, Brunson, DiVincenzo, OG, Randall, Ihart, was plus 17.1. So almost 12, or that's not fair. Almost just over 11 points per 100 possessions. Better than what we're seeing from this current starting lineup, now with an extremely large sample size. So I think we have to acknowledge at this point that that is not the starting lineup that is going to win the Knicks a championship.
Okay, so New York having some issues with the starting lineup, also the defense. Is that the biggest weakness that you can see from the rest of the contenders in the East and West, Hayes?
No, I mean, I think one of the biggest ones that I see as far as if we're talking about contenders in East and West is the Nuggets bench. I have some questions about their bench production as we all know Jokic and Russ and Jamal and those guys are great, but like, is the bench going to be enough heading into the playoffs for them? And also, like, I know Matt has brought this up multiple times before too, but it's starting to really feel like teams are starting to figure out how to play against Boston. And I'd be really interested to see what that looks like for a whole playoff series as teams are seeing other teams start figuring them out. So
I have an infinite number of answers here. Not infinite, I suppose, because there's only 30 teams in the NBA. But the real answer here is I think all these teams are good. Like, we're in a great era of parity, and I love this personally. So I can tell you about all the reasons why every team that's within range of contendership has a shot because of their strengths. But I can also tell you all the weaknesses that make them vulnerable. There are no invulnerable teams, and that includes Boston, as Hayes mentioned. When the Celtics shoot less than league average, which is 36.4% this season via cleaning the glass, non-garbage time, they're just 14-12. Just 14-12. Now, that's still really good because most teams are going to be way worse than that. But they are extremely dependent on the math. If you take that away, Boston really becomes mortal. they can still beat you, but they're very mortal. Been on this all season. The Cavs, that defense has not really hit the gear that it has had over the last couple of seasons. They're just not as sharp under Kenny Atkinson. The offense is way better, but they've got some size issues with Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell. They've got two guys that you can pick on. The Knicks are not serious. I'm just going to move on there. The West, the Nuggets, the bench is actually okay, but their defense, again, has real problems. They have really bad weak side containment with their scheme. The Thunder have questions about their shooting. The Grizzlies turn the ball over at insane rates. Everybody's vulnerable, Doug, and I love it because that means that matchups are going to determine who wins the NBA championship, and that's the kind of stuff that I love.
All right, let's move from teams that may have one vulnerability to teams that have multiple vulnerabilities. The teams at the bottom of their respective conferences that will be vying for the opportunity to select Cooper Flagg, number 1 overall in this upcoming draft. But will they get an opportunity to? In an interview with The Athletic, the consensus number 1 overall selection, Duke freshman Cooper Flagg said, quote, "I want to come back next year. I still feel like a kid," unquote. Now, this has almost 0% chance of actually happening, but it does give us an entry point into a conversation about which team needs Cooper Flagg the most and needs him as soon as possible. Matt, when you look over the available teams, and you could even, I guess, throw a surprise team in here that might have an opportunity to select in the top of the draft if Philadelphia falls just outside of the 6th pick. But which team needs Cooper Flagg the most?
A white megastar named Flagg? How is the answer not Utah, Doug?
Okay. That aside, I think they need him for a lot of reasons. There's not a lot of talent there. At least the talent they haven't been able to stack it up enough.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I do think Utah's kind of the answer. I think that Portland is actually a pretty good answer. They played better. They still don't have the guy. There's so many teams at the bottom that don't have the guy, right? The Wizards. DC, Flagg, like they need that guy. There's all of these teams that need the guy, and Flagg kind of presents it. Now, there's been some questions about whether or not Flagg is that type of player, that he's going to be so good and so awesome in so many areas and help you win, but maybe he's not give the ball to this guy in the 4th quarter and let him cook, that he's a different type because of his versatility, but not necessarily his strength on ball. So that's kind of interesting here. But I do think that most of these teams at the bottom, they're at the bottom because they don't have a guy to build around and they're still looking for it. That's why they're in this kind of position. Brooklyn's another one. So I just think that most of these teams, they're all looking for a guy like Cooper Flagg or Dylan Harper, to be fair, or VJ Edgecombe, to be fair, to kind of get there. So that would be kind of my answer. But I do think that Utah in particular, I mean, look, I think things are getting a little dicey for Will Hardy there. Their defense is terrible when it was okay. So, hey, that'd be my answer is Utah.
Does anybody think I'm going to pick anything else but the Chicago Bulls here? No, I'm going to pick my Chicago Bulls here. Let's just, the Bulls need to, we don't have, every other major market in the league is getting their team together. Heck, the Lakers somehow looked into Luka. Chicago's the 4th, 5th largest market. We need Cooper Flagg, but all outside of my homerism, I will say this, surprisingly enough, the Spurs aren't in the playoffs yet. Is there any chance that the Spurs can get Cooper Flagg and pair him with Wemby?
God, curtains. Wrap it up. All my parody stuff, throw it out. Throw that in the ocean. It's done. If they get Cooper Flagg, that'd be ridiculous.
That'd be crazy. But yeah, it seems like that. Of course, Flagg in Washington, but then Washington's going to ruin him. But to Matt's point, all the teams in the bottom of the league need Cooper Flagg. You need that guy that you can build an anchor around. And a lot of these teams that we're seeing out there don't have that anchor. So you can make a conversation for each one of the teams at the bottom here.
Also, Charlotte. I would love, LaMelo and Charlotte. And LaMelo and Flagg would be a really great combo. And I want Doug to be happy.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think from a talent perspective, who needs Cooper Flagg the most? I think you can make an argument certainly for Washington, for Utah. I think you can throw Charlotte into that conversation. But I would say in terms of a team that just needs a reason to shake things up, like look at Portland. Like they just keep sort of riding this fence of like, what are they going to do? Are they going to move Simons? And so I think, if they did score that number 1 overall selection, I think it would finally force them to at least build around a particular player as opposed to dancing around several of them.
Yeah, I think that one's a good option. I also think about if New Orleans got another number one pick. I love the idea of that just because then that means they can move on from Zion. Like Cooper Flagg, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones. Woo! Woo!
And they still got DeJounte there too if he's healthy.
Yeah, that's a pretty good team if they can actually get a medical staff in there that doesn't, I don't know, give leeches apparently.
All right, coming up, we're going to move from draft picks to hot seats. A few teams shook things up at the deadline, so we'll ask whose seat is the hottest as we go into the stretch run and prepare for the postseason. Plus, Kevin Durant, interesting comments after both on social media and to reporters after All-Star Weekend about the negativity surrounding the NBA. We'll get to all of that coming up next on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Hungryroot. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, I've always struggled to find the time between work, life, recording 1,000 podcasts to try and eat healthier. I'd buy things that I didn't need and still end up stressed out about what to cook. But then I discovered Hungryroot. It's been a total game changer. Hungryroot handles your grocery shopping and your meal planning, recommending meals based on your taste and your health goals. From anti-inflammatory to high-protein options, they've got it all. And the best part, every meal is ready in 15 minutes or less. Quick, healthy, and delicious meals delivered straight to your door. It doesn't get easier than this. Even my toddler, who is a notoriously picky eater, loved every meal that I made with Hungryroot. It made me feel like a rock star in the kitchen. You're going to love Hungryroot as much as I do. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, and you get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA. I'm going to say it one more time. hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA. Don't miss out. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. I want to talk about some hot seats across the NBA. We had a few teams shake some things up at the deadline in an effort to cool down talk of their team not getting better. One of those teams, the Milwaukee Bucks, traded a proven playoff veteran in Chris Middleton for Kyle Kuzma. Locked On Bucks, they're not entirely convinced it's going to work.
Big question that's out there, and why we asked in the title of the show, are the Bucks better in the short term and long term? Now, after the trade deadline, they are better in the long term. The short term still remains to be seen, and I think it's for one reason alone. You need to see that this works in the playoffs. Granted, there was a big question, and that big question mark hanging over the team and Chris Middleton was, is there going to be health in the playoffs? Mm-hmm. Assuming there was, that works. Like, go back to the series last year against the Pacers, some other performances that Chris has had along the way. He's a proven, in the 82 versus 16 conversation, Chris is a proven 16 player. Mm-hmm. I know Kyle Kuzma was on a championship team with the Lakers. I am not going to diminish the Lakers winning a bubble title because people tried to do the same thing to the Bucks. But that was basically it. He's played 26 career playoff games. 21 of them came in the bubble with the Lakers. We still need to see that he can be a playoff player.
Okay, Matt, we'll start with you. Which player, general manager, coach is on the hottest seat if things go poorly the rest of the way or in the early round of the playoffs? Is it Milwaukee or someone else?
I had some good conversations about this on the NBA Locked On NBA Squad Show West, where Joe Mullinax of Locked On Grizzlies talked about how there's a possibility Taylor Jenkins gets let go if they have an early playoff exit. That would not shock me either. How about Denver? You've got Calvin Booth or Michael Malone. If they're both still here in August, I'm going to assume Denver made the finals or won the title. Like, there is a tension there that exists between those two. So I think you got to look at that. I would be asking questions about Doc Rivers personally if I own the Bucks. And then here's one for you. Is Jimmy Butler gonna be the one that finally gets Pat Riley to be like, I'm done, I'm out? We've seen feuds with superstars. You've got all of these great coaches that have walked away after kind of mini feuds with players and decided they'd had enough. So I kind of wonder if this is maybe Pat Riley's all right, I'm out. Unfortunate end of it, but I want to go ahead and retire. All of those type of questions I think are really huge. And then what was the other one? Nico Harrison. That's it. Nico Harrison.
Nico Harrison is the answer to the question here. I think that it has to be Nico Harrison. Now, will that actually happen? I don't know, but his seat should not just be hot. It should be a flaming inferno right now. Should his seat be, because he made a stupid move. But so definitely, but I would look at the Milwaukee Bucks. I think overall, I think that this team is just, since this version of the team has come together, they've been trying to find their angle, their end, whether it's Doc Rivers, whether it's the GM. I think if this season comes crashing and burning and the Milwaukee Bucks are like a first round exit, God forbid it's something that early, you absolutely have to look at changes there in Milwaukee.
I mean, it should be Nico Harrison, but I just feel like all of the injuries, particularly, I mean, we don't know for sure when AD's coming back, but if that were to go long term, I just think it's such a radical move, and whether you think it's stupid or not, I think most people think it was not a great move, but there's so much wrapped up in it that I think everyone's going to want to see what it looks like before making any more changes. So yeah, I think that's an interesting situation there in Dallas. Make sure to check out Locked On Mavericks for more on that. Final thing here on today's edition of Locked On NBA, Kevin Durant, never one to shy away from the NBA topic du jour, had lots of things to say in the aftermath of the NBA All-Star Weekend, both on social media and to reporters. One of his main takeaways, everyone is being too negative about the All-Star Game, the All-Star Weekend, and maybe the NBA in general. Here's Brendan Clean of Locked On Suns with Kevin's posts and his thoughts.
Tweeted on Monday morning, I'm sure seeing a lot of that criticism, including on the broadcast of the All-Star Game itself, where Draymond Green and Charles Barkley and others are insulting the product as it's happening. And KD said, or wrote, I should say, I think it's more fun to complain about the NBA than to actually watch it. It kind of reminds me of this tweet that it goes around every so often. And the gist of it was, every day there's a main character on Twitter, and your job is to log on and not become that person. It feels like that's the case in sports as well. There's always some kind of thing that people have as their kind of pet issue. And for whatever reason, it's the NBA's turn. The All-Star Game is a big part of it. The lack of care that comes across. I think that the load management, it's undeniable that the league is that main character right now in sports, and in a not so good way.
In a reply to another tweet or another post on X, Kevin Durant suggested to someone who wanted to see more physicality and more loyalty in the NBA, he suggested to that person that they go and watch hockey. I love KD, never change. Matt, what do you think about this conversation about NBA negativity? Is KD right? Is he the right messenger? What do you think?
You can't make people like things. I think this is like, I always kind of come back to this. I hated watching the 2016 Warriors. It was inevitable until it wasn't. But the entire season, I was just like, what are we doing? There's no point in any of this. And everyone else loved it. Everyone else loved it. You can't blame people for liking or disliking things. Part of it with KD is KD's got a very zen, very chill, very, how to put this, THC light way to approach life. And like, all he really wants to do is hit, like, I don't know that there's anybody in the NBA, maybe in the world, that loves basketball more than KD. I'm serious. KD loves basketball. It's his favorite thing. And so much so that he really doesn't care about legacy or big picture stuff or fierce competitiveness. He just loves playing basketball and watching basketball and basketball itself. There is a pure love for the game that comes through. Like, that's at the root of all of this, is that. The only problem is, like, most people want, if you're watching it, you want some level of competition, you want some level of stakes, you want some level of buy-in. It's got to compel you. Otherwise, you're just watching jump shots. And I think for real hoopers, of which I am not, I think that's enough. But for most people, it isn't. And that's the difference here, is that KD has a love for the game itself that I don't think really anyone can touch. And that causes this kind of thing. Could we all be more positive? Sure. Look around you, Helen. Like, there's a lot of reasons to not be positive right now. And I think it's okay for people to express how they feel honestly about something that they've chosen to spend their time and money on, Hayes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a little tone deaf in the sense that it's not just fans complaining about this. Adam Silver's complained about this. Other players have talked about this around the league. So to just act like it's just fans that just want to complain about something to complain about something, sure, there's a little bit of that, but there's a legitimate problem here that people are seeing. And that it seems like there's a contingent of fans and for people internally in the NBA that do want to get this fixed. It's going to be hard to. So I don't think you can just categorize this as just fans wanting to whine and complain. There's a desire to be entertained by this and a sense of you want to see the best players around the league compete at a time where they're all facing off against each other. So. And I get what he's saying. I get what the message is that he's trying to get across, but I think he is missing the fact that there are other basketball players also frustrated by this.
Oh, you're a happy Hornet. What do you think?
Well, so I think part of this is that Kevin Durant, we know, spends a lot of time online, particularly on social media. And if you've ever spent a lot of time on social media or in the YouTube comments, you'll notice a trend that people tend to be a little bit more negative than maybe the people that don't spend a lot of time online or don't bother to comment. Like if you bother to comment, it's typically because you are bothered, not because you are not bothered. Not a lot of people get on to comment, yay. So I would say that's part of maybe KD's issue with the negativity. But I think the other part of this, and I'm echoing a little bit of what you've been talking about here, which is that people, I think, generally are negative because they want things to change, because they also, maybe they don't love it in the same way that KD does, but they love the game in their own way, and they want to see things change more positively. And I don't think that you would see this kind of resounding negativity about the All-Star weekend if there didn't need to be legitimate changes. And I think part of the frustration is that people have been saying a lot of this stuff for many, many years, and the NBA has not been incentivized to change because they've been getting huge television contracts because, whatever their internal numbers have said to them has not forced them to change. But you just need to look at baseball to see how quickly things can turn around, how quickly people can go from, I've been spending years going to games and watching games, and now all of a sudden I've said my piece, I've complained about it to friends, to family, online, and now I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And that's the danger that the NBA faces existentially, is you eventually have to respond to people, or people will respond, and they'll respond by turning the television off.
Well said, Doug. Very well said.
All right, well, let us know what you think on YouTube, youtube.com, in the comments at Locked On NBA. We always love it. And sometimes we get positive stuff. We'll read both. We'll read the positive. We will read the negative, because it's all interesting to us here on Locked On NBA. If you like what you heard, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube. Thanks so much for making Locked On NBA your first listen. The action's almost back. Lakers, Hornets, they get things started tomorrow night. And we will, Game Time will cover that, and we will preview it tomorrow on Locked On NBA. We'll see you then.